For many residents of the Cuban capital, the sun was the only light they saw Wednesday morning. Once again, a blackout left millions of people without electricity in the troubled Caribbean island nation. The latest loss came after the country's largest power plant failed overnight. This has happened several times over the past couple months, and there are a number of reasons for it. The Cuban government blames the United States, saying that American trade restrictions that date back to the Cold War have made it difficult for the communist island to buy fuel. But Cuba's usual suppliers of that, Mexico, Russia, and Venezuela, have recently reduced their oil shipments to the island. That's one problem for the nation's outdated oil-fired power plants, which have other issues. The country's been grappling for months with an economic crisis. Natural disasters like a hurricane that struck there last month have only made things worse for Cuba's struggling infrastructure. Reuters News reports that record numbers of Cubans have left the island over the past 3 years, as the electricity problems have added to ongoing shortages of food, water, and medicine. From the Caribbean to the African continent to Europe and then returning to Africa, this is the world from A to Z. I'm Carl Azuz, so thankful to be your tour guide today. We're launching a two-part series that has to do with gold mining and not always the legal kind. But let's see if you can guess the nation where this is taking place.
Where in the world? This is a nation of West Africa whose official language is English. The country achieved its independence from Britain in 1957. It's located between Ivory Coast and Togo, and its capital is Accra. This is Ghana, a nation of more than 34 million people.
Gold has been characterized as part of Ghana's economic DNA, like coffee farming in Kenya, and something known as galamsey, what locals call small mining operations that aren't licensed by the government, is helping some Ghanans make a living. But it's taking a toll on local environments and possibly the health of the women and babies who live there.
The sound of the gold rush in Ghana, where a multi-billion-dollar industry gets around 40% of its gold production from small-scale mining, but people here are raising the alarm over potentially devastating consequences.
This is the reality of the environmental catastrophe that is galamsey, illegal gold mining. So much of the land is dug up and destroyed, hoping to strike gold. And this water makes its way right back into communities that have no alternative.
Locals, including female miners, here in Western Ghana fear the brown, murky water that now flows in these rivers is contaminated by the mining process. They believe it is poisoning them and their unborn children.
Do you drink that water?
No, seriously no. Because I fear for my life. I fear that if I give that water to her, she may die.
Diana Ajewa says other mothers and babies in the community have been affected. Scientists in Ghana have begun studying the potential impact of illegal small-scale mining on maternal health. No definitive links have been found, but across the world, the impact of heavy metals such as mercury used in mining on maternal health have been documented by scientists.
When you measured the concentration of heavy metals within these fetuses, what did you find?
We found enormous numbers of these heavy metals, including mercury, lead, arsenic, cadmium.
And what was the effect of the heavy metals on the actual fetuses?
Bad.
The World Health Organization says exposure to mercury, even small amounts, may cause serious health problems and is a threat to development of the child. But in Ghana, miners like Sarah Akusa, who wears plastic in an attempt to protect herself, say there's no other option to earn a living.
We're heading up north today to Canada to check in with McGrath High School. Mr. Sabi's class is watching and awesome in the town of McGrath in the province of Alberta. East-southeast of there in the city of Thief River Falls, Minnesota, we've got the Prowlers watching from Mrs. Youngke's class. Big hello to Lincoln High School. And in the Beehive state of Utah, it's great to see Mrs. Gibby's class and the students of Mountain Green Middle School in Morgan.
Word of knowledge. The mathematician Edward Lorenz is best known for his work concerning what? Chaos theory, number theory, calculus, algorithms. While American researcher Edward Lorenz isn't the only scientist associated with chaos theory, he helped advance the study.
Chaos theory, which includes the butterfly effect you're about to hear of, is based on the idea that the world is a very sensitive and surprising place, that major events that appear random might actually be caused by tiny, seemingly insignificant happenings in far-flung parts of the planet. Again, it's a theory, but Chloe Hendon has an example of how an insect at the bottom of the food chain might have changed the diet of an apex predator at the top.
Have you ever heard of the butterfly effect? The idea that something small can play a part in a bigger event later. The classic example is a butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the world, affecting the formation of a hurricane in another part far away. Here's another version, the ant effect. In the African savannah, herds of skittish zebras can be a little less worried about lions thanks to a tiny insect. Well, okay, bazillions of them. This is a big-headed ant, and it's invasive, meaning it doesn't belong in the savannah. It probably came from the island of Mauritius and first multiplied in a conservation park in Kenya. Big-headed ants drive out native acacia ant populations, taking their place in whistling thorn trees. Not so good for the trees that used to have a good deal going with the native ants, what's called a symbiotic relationship. The native acacia ants got a home and nectar, while the trees got protection from animals, especially elephants. The native ants would bite them, releasing a stinging, caustic chemical. But elephants have no worries with the big-headed ants, so they've grazed like crazy on the whistling thorn trees. Here's how the lion fits in. The king of the jungle likes to use the shade of those trees as a place to hide when stalking zebras. With elephants destroying so many of those hiding places, lions have had to change their hunting behavior, and over the last couple of decades, they've been killing far fewer zebras. That's good news for zebras, but not such good news for buffalo. The lions aren't going hungry, they've just taken to preying on the slower moving animal instead. Tiny ants, big changes.
On this date in world history. On December 5th, 1848, U.S. President James K. Polk told Congress about an abundance of gold that had been found in California. That fueled the rush that brought hundreds of thousands of people to what would become the Golden State. December 5th, 1933 saw the ratification of the 21st Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. That repealed the 18th Amendment and formally ended Prohibition, which had been a 14-year ban on making, selling, or transporting alcoholic drinks in America. And on this date in 1952, what became known as the Great Smog settled over London. Air pollution from natural fog combined with the smoke from fires and furnaces had been a problem in the city for centuries. But the Great Smog, which lasted for 5 days, was the worst on record. It was blamed for thousands of deaths, and it led to new limits on burning around the city. After the tremendous amount of lake effect snow we told you about earlier this week that fell on Great Lakes locales like Buffalo, New York, it makes sense that some residents would shovel out a path to help get around their deeply buried backyards. But this one isn't just for people, it's for pets. Ones that aren't really tall enough to see over or bound through the snow, but now have an easier way of staying on track while traversing a winter wonderland. Not exactly a snow leopard, but if your cat's been Himalayan around like a rag doll and you want to give it claws to meow a little more, grab a shovel and some catnip and make it Siamesier for the munchkin to use its snowshoes to angle outside for a bit. I'm Carl Azuz, getting around on the world from A to Z. You are the perfect audience. The cats meow and you mean the world to me.